Hi, and welcome to AmalgamNation Presents World of Lorecraft, Nativecraft, Aqir Lore, Nerubian Lore Edition. Quite a mouthful, isn't it? This week's vid is in addition, well, I say this week's vid out of habit, but this vid is in addition to last week's vid, and there will be another vid tomorrow about the Qiraji, and then there will be another Lorecraft vid on Thursday as usual. So bear with me because I didn't expect the lore about the Aqir to be split up so much. Nerubians are an ancient race of intelligent arachnoids native to Northrend within the kingdom of Azjol-Nerub. Early Nerubian history. At the ancient continent of Kalimdor Center was a mysterious lake of incandescent energies, the Well of Eternity. It was the true heart of the world's magic and natural power. From this magical ether the Silithid were born. As the fallen old god Cthulhu recognized their appearance, he attempted to sunder the world that it once held in its unmerciful grasp. The old god created avatars from the Silithid in its own image. These avatars were to be known as the Qiraji. The Aqir ruled the lands of the far west. These clever insectoids were greatly expansionistic and incredibly evil. The Aqir were obsessed with eradicating all non-arthropod life from the fields of Kalimdor, so the two big troll empires of the Gurubashi and Amani found their common enemy in the Third Empire, the nation of Aqir. The trolls fought them for many thousands of years, but never succeeded in winning a true victory over the Aqir. Eventually, due to the trolls' persistence, Aqir split as its citizens fled to separate colonies in the far northern, western and southern regions of the continent. Three Aqir city-states emerged: Azjol-Nerub in the northern wastes, Qiraji in the western desert, and another group to dread wastes in the far south. So the new empire of Azjol-Nerub that stretched like a great web beneath the desolate glaciers of the land, later known as Northrend, was founded. War of the Spider. Thousands of years later, when the Lich King extended his influence over Northrend, the shadowy empire stood against his power. The ancient subterranean kingdom of Azjol-Nerub sent their elite warrior guard to attack Icecrown and end the Lich King's mad bid for dominance. Much to his frustration, Ner'zhul found that the evil Nerubians were immune not only to the undead plague, but to his telepathic domination as well. The Nerubian Spider Lords commanded vast forces and had an underground network that stretched nearly half the breadth of Northrend. Their hit-and-run tactics on the Lich King's strongholds stymied his efforts to root them out time after time. Ultimately, Ner'zhul's war against the Nerubians was won by attrition. With the aid of the sinister Dreadlords and innumerable Undead Warriors, the Lich King invaded Azjol-Nerub and brought its subterranean temples crashing down upon the Spider Lords' heads. The Nerubian Empire had now fallen for a second time. Though the Nerubians were immune to his plague, Ner'zhul's growing necromantic powers allowed him to raise the Spider Warriors' corpses and bend them to his will. As a testament to their tenacity and fearlessness, Ner'zhul adopted the Nerubians' distinctive architectural style for his own fortresses and structures. Though there are few pockets of Nerubian warriors left, they still seek to gain vengeance upon Ner'zhul and reclaim their subterranean kingdom. Recent history. Now, the Nerubians are a depleted and embittered people. Most live in Northrend and shun all contact with outsiders. Indeed, they attack intruders on sight, viewing all creatures not of their kind with suspicion. Understandably, they possess a vitriolic hatred of undead, especially crypt fiends and crypt lords. They realize that they are too weak to overthrow the Lich King and must content themselves with their pathetic guerrilla war. Mael Shalub, a living Nerubian necromancer, travelled south and worked with but hated the forsaken Blaurus Wittrick to defeat the Scourge in Silverpine Forest. Nerubians in wrath of the Lich King. With the death of their former leaders, the Nerubian viziers have risen to power. They serve an unseen emperor, one who is destined to lead the ancient spider people to a final victory over the Scourge. This does not seem to be touched upon in Wrath of the Lich King. In the quest The Faceless Ones and Proof of Demise, Harold Volaz, Clix the Unraveler, and Archmage Landalok say that as the Nerubians fought the Scourge, they dug deeper underground as they lost ground to the undead. We inadvertently exposed a tendril of the old god's will, which was made manifest in the creatures known only as the Faceless. He then goes on to say that they lost the war because, in the end, we could not fight on two fronts against such powerful enemies. Our misfortune cost us the war against the undead and ultimately our home, implying that the Nerubians discovered the Faceless Ones by accident. Nerubian Culture. Azjol Nerub contained huge libraries of literature, philosophy, and arcane lore. Occasionally the kingdom would kidnap humans and elves for experimentation. Kel'Thuzad claims that they were fiercely intelligent and their will dedicated to wiping out any who were not like themselves, much like the Aqir. Nerubians are cruel and xenophobic, like their Selative relatives are hostile to all races. Nerubian culture may place great store in longevity. Nerubians encountered at the Sundered Monolith told Bran their ages, and they seemed impressed by his. Legends tell of the Nerubians using the Jormungandr as creatures of labour, forcing them to carve massive tunnels through northern subterranean ice and lay the groundwork for the Nerubians' ancient civilization. Nerubian culture resembles the ancient Egyptian and Mesopotamian culture in terms of their architecture, though the ziggurats are of a completely different design. Neurobion Architecture. As attested by the many traps and contraptions found in the Azjol Nerub dungeons, they were once good engineers. The Nerubian architectural style was adopted by the Lich King after the War of the Spider, and so ziggurats, the big necropolises, refer to their building style. Of course, most of the architecture can be seen in Azjol Nerub itself. Another good example for their style is the statue in the Pit of Fiends. Nerubian society. The Nerubians had a complex social organization like ants or bees. The function of each individual was predetermined by genetics, as well by the subspecies they belonged to. Different types of Nerubian are referred to as castes, with a lifelong occupation and responsibility in society. Seers, for example, are relatively high-level Nerubians who act as priests and mages. Spider Lords are the rulers of the society in the same mould as the aristocracy of humanoid races. The colonies were headed by a Nerubian queen who was responsible for giving birth to new Nerubians. The queens wielded great power, although in most cases they shared it with Spider Lords, a subspecies that bears more resemblance to beetles than to spiders, which are born from a litter of 20 egg sacs laid by a queen, and the Nerubian Viziers, another subspecies with preference for magic, acting as special advisors to their queen. There was also a Spider Lord reigning over all the Nerubians, and whose main function was to coordinate the Nerubians' colonies through its queens. He also should provide protection to them. All the Spider Lords and the last king of the Nerubians, Anu-Barak, were killed and later resurrected by the Lich King after the War of the Spider, and they became Crypt Lords of the Scourge. At the bottom of society were the Nerubian workers who performed various tasks. Workers who showed unusual physical abilities became warriors, workers who showed mental talents became seers, and those who demonstrated exceptional weaving skills became Nerubian web spinners. Other subspecies are Nerubian flyers and Nerubian spiderlings. The spider is the most common motif for the Nerubians. They have appeared to have evolved, at least partially, into an arachnid race with 8 limbs from an insectoid race with 6 limbs. Despite the Nerubian cultural association with spiders, who reproduce through any male and any female, they reproduce as social insects do, through queens. Undead Nerubians are usually under control of the Scourge and are known as Crypt Fiends in the case of most Nerubians, and Crypt Lords, Undead Spider Lords. Too few Crypt Fiends appear in Azeroth, so nobody knows yet what Nerubian females look like or are called. They may join a group of adventurers in the hopes of striking against the Lich King, or of gaining the power to do so. Other Nerubians, often young ones, leave their homes because they want no part of their people's hopeless conflict and desire to become more than embittered survivors. Perhaps they want to attain, at an individual level at least, the heights their people once possessed. The remote possibility exists that a handful of Nerubians are not evil and could get along with other races better than their brethren. Nerubian Languages. Nerubians speak Common and Nerubian. Nerubian is both a spoken and a sign language. Many Nerubians are fluent in Common as well as their own tongue, which is a clicking, rasping language. Nerubian Faith. In ancient Asjal Nerub, there were 5 or 6 schools of religious thought, and theological debates were commonplace. Eventually, however, the Nerubians have come to the conclusion that worshipping creatures from beyond the world is insane, and in the words of the seer Ul Tumon, makes as much sense as a fly caught in a web worshipping the spider who is about to devour him. To modern Nerubians, even the concept of worship itself is alien. Thank you for listening. As always, remember, play to game and game to play.